The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Drum webinar, How to Create a Personalised Experiences for Your Customers. I'm Justin Pearce from the Drum. Personalisation is undoubtedly one of the hottest topics in marketing today. The Drum constantly cover big stories about brands looking to provide personalised experiences for their customers. Because today consumers are living seamlessly across platforms, across channels and across devices. And they expect the brands they love to provide experiences that are personalised to these channels, devices, and more importantly, their behaviour. We've seen McDonald's recently adopt mass personalisation plans. Sainsbury's look at 2016 as a year personalisation becomes a central plank of its customer relationship strategy. And we want to find out a bit more. So we've partnered with Tealium, customer data platform. We surveyed our readers. We surveyed 200 brand marketers to find out how they were overcoming the challenges of personalisation, what these challenges were and what they were doing about it. So I'd like to introduce my two guest speakers here with me today. Andreas Bahr is Head of Analytics at TUI.com. At TUI, which is the world's #1 tourism company, he leads the analytics team responsible for developing analytics systems and data applications for the digital commerce unit of TUI Germany. And with us is Lindsay. Lindsay McEwen is VP EMEA at Tealium. He's got over 2 decades leading a range of marketing and technology businesses. His previous roles include Director of Sales at Adobe, Managing Director at Neolane Systems, as well as positions at companies like Oracle, Tibco and Carmet. So we're going to spend the next hour or so digging a bit deeper into the results of our survey. On the screen in front of you, you can see the headline findings of the survey we did, the Drum Market Insights Survey, Press of Personalisation. You can see here about 70% of marketers believe personalisation is very important to the customer experience, but only 40% are currently unifying data across channels to fuel this personalisation. They know consumers want this stuff, but they're not quite perhaps going far enough to deliver it. We found 80% finding or believing personalisation has significant positive impact on brand perception and customer engagement. But 50%, over half of the marketers we surveyed, felt constrained by technology issues and budget issues. So let's find out a bit more about this, about why customers aren't going far enough, how they can go further, and how brands can best develop these personalised experiences the customers now are demanding. So we'll kick over, Lindsay, to you.
Good afternoon. After 20 years, thank you, Justin, of working in technology and marketing, it's been a real interesting journey to watch the evolution of personalisation. I started off my life in database companies, which was never about personalisation, moved into email companies, which was all about personalisation. And I remember the excitement that organizations used to experience when a gender-specific email was created. It was a great corner to turn when Mr. McEwen wasn't Mrs. McEwen. And I think if you look at the journey that we've come on from just a simple salutation in an email to where we are now, I meet hundreds and hundreds of businesses every year, and each one of them talks to me about what their consumers are expecting from them as an organization. And like all technology companies, we like to build a 3-letter acronym around that conversation. And I'm running into it more and more every day. And this concept of the data value exchange. And what does that mean? Well, I as a consumer don't mind organizations using my data to better personalize and target communications and offers to me if those offers and communications are relevant and appropriate to me as an individual. And that's the real challenge with personalization. There is some social stigma around the use of my data, both online and also my historical data that's been stored in my interactions. And I, as a consumer, want you as a business to properly use that data to serve me content. If you start to use my data to serve me data about products I've already purchased, or you send me retargeting emails to allow me to join your organization when I'm already a customer, these are the challenges that get in the way of the science of personalization within marketing. And what's happening is the consumer is coming at us as organizations from a multitude of platforms and channels. And it's our job as businesses to be able to understand, analyze, and react to that data as it flows through our organization in real time. Actually, what that really leads us on to is the next challenge. Whilst that was a wonderfully simple statement that I put together that says, let's understand data in real time as it flows through my organization, the reality of data in an organization in 2016 is what we see in front of us here. There are a multitude of profiles of individuals, whether it be online or offline data profiles. And I personally experienced this in my life. My name is Lindsay McEwen. In most parts of England, that's taken as a girl's name. So I am forever being marketed to as if I'm the guy standing in the database silo. I'm a tall 6'3" chap who likes to wear stilettos. I buy a plethora of goods from a plethora of stores who continue to specifically focus on me as a female. That's because on that channel, I am only seen as Lindsay, when the reality of it is I'm not a female, not all the time. And the reality of it is I need to be treated as a single individual across all of those channels. So that is, do I get an online profile of Lindsay McEwen, and does that match the profile that we have over here on an offline in-store system that copies and stores my purchases inside the organization? And can I craft all of those profiles into a single source of segmentation to enable me to contact Lindsay McEwen across all of those channels with a consistent, personalized message? Now, that's a really generic conversation about how fragmented data can be tied together. The real reality is A, getting your hands on it, B, reacting to it quick enough to personalize, and C, ensuring that content blocks within personalization are appropriate to the person that receives it. Now, those are probably three of the biggest challenges that we have in this industry. Getting at it in real time, getting back to real-time data enough to influence a moment of truth, and thirdly, ensuring that the moment of truth and the content block that is served on that personalization are the same thing. Three very huge channels that we can talk about from a high level with a company like Tealium. But I think what would be really interesting would be to speak to a customer of Tealium. Andreas Bahr and Tealium have been friends for 4 or 5 years now. And we've really kind of worked together on how to grow personalization in an extremely competitive environment where personalization, I guess, is everything in travel, Andreas. So I think what would be really interesting would be to hand over to Andreas to get a understanding of how personalization really affects the travel industry. Andreas.
Great. Before we hand over to Andreas, that was a brilliant introduction. Thank you so much. It's going to be a lot of information delivered today in the next hour or so. So you can ask questions. On the right hand of your screen, there's the question panel. Ask whatever you want. I'll try and take questions throughout the presentation. We've also got a session right at the end, so don't forget to ask questions. So now, as Lindsay said, over to you, Andreas, to take us a bit deeper into how it works in your particular industry.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. And Lindsay, you're totally right. At least in the travel industry, we are in a really competitive environment, and this gives us some extra challenges that I see. And well, they might be special in some way, but I also believe this might give most of you guys out there a good feeling of how deep you might have to get into the topic to really understand what you're doing with your customers. Well, in travel, we see a really long customer journey. So we typically have like 8 months or even more between the first engagement and the first purchase. So if someone becomes a customer, his journey starts a long way ago. And of course, if we talk about long journeys, you have a lot of touch points during the journey. So from what we all know, classic desktops, smartphones, tablets, but also even more so we have non-digital touch points, so happening offline, so in stores or in terms of travel at the travel agency offices. And again, some of those might be our own assets, some of them might be franchise or even third-party retailers. So this gives us some more headaches about how to approach and how to contact our customers in a unique way across all those touch points. So it might be just a bit more complex than buying shoes or, you know.
Well, I would also say that you have a lot more time to get it wrong.
Yes.
which is equally scary, I would imagine.
Right, and if you get it wrong in any of those places.
Absolutely, in that 8-month period, that's a long tail.
Enough competitors to take over gladly, you know. Yeah, and well, while in those competitive markets, you need to have something that makes you unique towards your customers. And of course, personalization is one of the most innovative fields that you can dig into, and it's one of the answers of doing this. But still, with personalization, it's all about content, as you said. And there is another challenge along the way. Content in travel is not really unique, so most of the content. So basically, the product is all the same. You have a flight, hotel, plus X, whatever.
Yep.
But hotel content is always the same. Destination content is the same across all competitors. So what makes you offering unique content to a customer? One answer could be, as you said, offer the right content at the right time, because also there's huge amount of content. Yeah. So customers really need to focus on what they want to get, and this is something that we can do for them, and this might be a unique proposition to the customer. Yeah, and well, even with those challenges, we come to terms of measurement. So even if we find some way to approach those challenges, how do we know we got it right? Yeah. Because as I said, the conversion that we usually trigger or usually measure happens a long time after I push the content or the email marketing campaign or something out to the customer. And even people might not even purchase online, or even might not purchase at our own asset or own stores. They might purchase at a third-party store, and we might not even know he purchased because he was triggered by a certain campaign or content. So this makes it a bit more difficult, and it also means that we need to focus on really long tail approaches other than tailored brand campaigns, for example. So again, the challenge here is you need to look for really deep into your metrics, go for more like engagement, like frequency of visit, not so much about conversion metrics, and you need to care about the budget you're putting in. You know, Lindsay, we are pretty tough about budgets when it comes to working with Tealium. You know that. The reason is when we spend some amount of money in the first place, we might only see the return of it like a year later. Yeah. So we're rather going for small-sized projects and proving early success on those budget limits, and then go for more complex solutions afterwards.
And you make a really valid point there, Andreas. It's something that the Drum identified during this process as a challenge that people have, is technology and budgets for technology in this process. And the reality of it is, you're looking for success almost to be, did that person buy a product related to the content block that was served to them 8 months ago?
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate judge of success. So the tail on that, as you say, is gargantuan, and being able to link product to output is also very complex. So it's something that we see very often from organizations as to how they work through this. Let's talk about how Tealium kind of resolved these challenges, both generically, and then let's talk about how we did that at TUI. Yeah. So we believe in two concepts. Firstly, you've got to be able to get at the data, and everybody talks to me about all these wonderful tools that sit in the atmosphere that allow you to make complex decisions based on real time on data as it goes through your organization. But people often underestimate the challenge of physically grasping that data, either getting your hands on it and then the time that it takes you to get your hands on it. You know, there's nothing more inappropriate in personalization than sending a message that is time irrelevant, that is based on an activity or an action that took place in the past. I remember getting a Happy Easter campaign sent to me in the summer, which I thought was my favorite kind of explanation of how that was done to me. And building this
just to pick up on that briefly, sorry to interrupt. That's a great example of personalisation gone totally wrong.
Yeah.
What happened there? There's so many brands listening thinking like having panic attacks when they give that sort of example. What happened there? How can brands make sure that doesn't happen to them?
Well, I mean, I think it's a simple, real-time data is what's going to influence a moment of truth. And you know, Andreas, you talked earlier about being in a heavily competitive industry where it's difficult to have a unique content block to serve to that individual. But I guess what's really important is that you serve content blocks based on the behaviors of that individual. And you better make sure that your content block, it pivots around the behaviors, both off and offline, of that individual, whether they've been into a store and asked information about a destination, whether they're looking for a particular package, whether they fit into a VIP box, or whether they're looking for a budget holiday. You really need to make sure that you're aggregating that in real time. So the first thing that we believe at Tealium is first-party data is everything. Now, we understand the relevancy and importance of third-party data and also the strength of second-party data. But to us, I spend my life speaking to consumers and customers who tell me that they're pretty sure that half of their budget is being spent in the right way. They're just not sure which half it is that's being spent. And they're pretty sure that they're speaking to the right people. I mean, I spoke to a bank only this morning who spends 70% of their advertising budget retargeting customers. So 7 out of every £10 they're spending on acquiring people who have already been acquired. So that's a great example of organizations using third-party data, which at a 3-level decision tree is sometimes only 20% correct. First-party data, in theory, is correct 100% of the time because it is physical user and offline stored data as it flows through your organization. So that's the first thing. Get your hands on it.
Let me just jump in here again. Lindsay, what do you think is the biggest challenge to brands using first-party data correctly? We hear this so often at the moment, but again, we also hear at the Drum many marketers telling us that their company is not using their own first-party data correctly.
Getting it. It's not as easy as you think, you know, and there are some pure, I mean, the way Tealium solves this problem is our background comes from tag management. So we started our life as a tag management solution that quite literally replaced Java tags within online environments to enable people to track consumer and first-party data. That's kind of where our home DNA came from. Previous to that, we created the Java tag. So our founders rather cleverly created the mess of the Java tag and then formed another company to tidy up the mess they'd already made.
Very clever.
Very clever. So that's your first challenge, you know, and that's how we deal with it. So we physically have tools that marketers can use, because there's the other big disconnect. We've got fast-charging marketing businesses wanting to move forward in an aggressive way, and a technology team who are concerned about the technology limitations that come with that. And it's bridging the gap. Sorry, Andreas, you were going to say.
There's one more point about it. You need to think that this is your customer actually you're targeting. So this should be about your own data, and it's not the customer of the partners that are giving you the third-party data, who are offering algorithms and highly sophisticated stuff to you. That's not their customer, it's your own customer. So you need to be in control of the data of your own customer, which makes it first-party data actually. Yeah, and we know we also started with Tealium IQ with tag management, building data layers and stuff like that, and making sure all the data goes into the systems the same way. And this clearly is the foundation for what you need to know about the customer. You need to know what data you already have, and that, I believe that usually is one of the points that people don't get, where there's a disconnect. Yeah, you might have all those data, but maybe people in marketing do not know about it. Yeah, so you need to have like transparency of what I already have, and you need to always think it is your own customer, and it's not the customer of any third-party company. So this is why you need to take care about your first-party data. This is my point of view.
And Andreas, you're absolutely correct. And we're just about to deal with the next biggest challenge that you have within a unified customer view and how to personalize properly, which is how do I make sure that Lindsay on an iPad is Lindsay offline and Lindsay online? And you know, there is a ton of companies out there in the marketing architecture world who will sell you some black magic to do visitor stitching. But you know, here's a news report, guys, that there is no black magic to visitor stitching. There needs to be a common identifier across all of these individuals to be able to identify them. Oh, and here we go. We need to have a central repository of all of those stitched visitors. And lastly, you've got to have a single source of segmentation that is the parent of all personalization, so that there is a single source of how to take first-party data in real time and then market to it. Because again, I know you and I have seen this a million times before. I've been into organizations before where they have 5 or 6 sources of segmentation, and people exist in one segment in one place and different segments in another place. So it'd be interesting to talk about how you're thinking of dealing with these particular two meaty challenges.
Well, there is also no magic at the moment for Twitter.com, for example, because we see that today still. Yeah, we still have different platforms, DMPs, programmatic buying, third-party tools, stuff like that, where we have different segmentation, different data silos again, and we have our perfect tag management world where we come from. So yeah, data is one thing, but the next biggest issue and next biggest challenge is to connect all those channels and to bring them onto one platform. So flexibility is the key there. Yeah. So to be able to plug in different sources of data, first party and then again third party probably, and then getting those data out again to be fostered in the tools that you use. Yeah.
One of the things that's always interested me is the challenge between organization wanting to focus on the new trendy data. First party is kind of the whole, but it'd be interesting to hear your opinions on how important offline, in-store, in-business data is to properly form personalization.
Yeah, well, to give you a figure, it might depend on a certain market, but in Germany you have like 80 to 90% purchases happening offline and not online. So this gives you the importance of offline data.
Wow, 80 to 90%.
Yeah,
wow.
While most of this data is totally disconnected. Yeah, you never know where someone is buying when in which store. Yeah, you know that from your data warehouse system probably, but then this again disconnects to any of your marketing activities. So things like in-store tracking, for example, those fancy new technologies is pretty important. Yeah, and doing that on your own digital platform and connecting this data is so important because all of your online marketing activity happens on your own website. So for example, if you have a brand like TUI, people will go to TUI.com, even if you're not marketing on it.
Agreed.
Yeah? So any campaign that you do, either online or offline, will come to this website at some point in the journey. So you need to be able to connect all those dots on your own, on our website and our platform. Yeah.
You talked there earlier about using some form of in-store tracking.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about using things like beacons to attract locational data as well as decision data?
Yes, we think about it, and there are some test cases to do that. It might not be especially about beacons, but more about location-sensitive data. Yeah, because if you think of all the different touch points, the thing you always have with you is your mobile phone, or you're logged into your tablet on with the same account on your mobile phone, and this then connects again to the offline world. So if you're standing in front of a something on a bus stand, and you see an advert of TUI, then you always have your mobile phone with you. When you're back at home on your sofa,
Yep.
using a tablet, you're still connected with the same account again. So this connects both worlds actually. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting.
Well, coming back to the point of personalization, one more thing is that we see at TUI.com is that we're talking about all those complex scenarios like in-store tracking, like connecting via mobile phones. But the key at the moment is we are not there yet. Yeah. We still need to understand first-party data, and we still need to connect data across channels and across platforms. So having those big-scale dream projects in mind, we still need to slice them down to individual agile approaches. So, for example, some 6 months back, we needed to decide where we go for a fully algorithmic approach, for example, for personalization, for offering content to the customers, or do we go for a rule-based, simple approach, for example? And I'm always in favor of doing the simple things first, with the big things in mind. Yeah. So, for example, going for a rule-based approach for personalization gives you the perfect opportunity to build in your own data, to build in your own logic, and to be transparent at the same time. And you can go from being really simple to being really complex over a course of like 6 to 12 months. And then if you go there and you understand the full thing from simple to complex, you still can then build in like algorithmic models, like statistical algorithms, to get the last bit out of it.
And of course, that helps you with your discussion with the board about the impact of personalization.
True, because you actually know about it.
Absolutely, and that's one of the big pitfalls that people discover nowadays when they sell this dream of online, real-time, fully segmented, fully customized, fully stitched personalization, that there is such a big project bucket there that if you can't segment it up into chewable sizes and be able to give return on each one of those, that's where all of these projects fall apart, in my experience.
So let me ask a question, and by the way, just to remind everyone listening, you can ask questions yourself. There's a question pane on the right-hand side of the screen. Ask anything you want from our guest speakers. So just to both of you really, Andreas, you talked about the idea of being a more agile approach to this. So what's your one piece of advice to our listeners, a different variety of brands that want to start on personalization? What's your one piece of advice to how they can best do this and not get put off by the scale of the issue?
Well, to do an example, we could think of fully customizing or personalizing our search results on TUI.com, like Google would do it for their search results. And that would be a dream, that would be perfect. But I don't think we would get there in the next 12 months. Yeah. So what we rather do is we start with really simple things like people were searching for Spain destinations 4 or 5 times. So we're just giving them Spain content. Yeah? Or people look for certain beach hotels. So we're just giving them 80% beach hotels all the time. Yeah. So start with really simple questions of rules of approaches that you can control, that you know best of. Yeah. So from whatever industry you come from, think about what would be the simplest thing that you know about your own data, your own customers. Start with that, and then take this rule and like build it more complex over time. Yeah. And you'll see if you have a platform and you have the tool to build those complex rules, the same way you're doing the simple ones, you would get there pretty quick. So once you start simple, things will get pretty complex and pretty messy pretty soon. Yeah. But this is the way you should do it. Yeah. Start with simple and small projects and small approaches, and do like that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Great advice, and that's a nice segue onto our next point. Sounds simple, doesn't it? You can see on your screen. This sounds very easy. I mean, not to me at all, and I guess not to our listeners. But let's now to both of you. So, what are the quickest and the easiest improvements being made by brands quickly to satisfy their consumers' experience? How can we take the first steps? Andreas, you've touched on this already, but that's to anyone.
I mean, for me, it's an odd environment where reality and excitement need to be kept apart when it comes to personalization, both internally and externally. I've seen some very, very exciting personalized campaigns which were very simple to create and addressed a small audience, but had such a heavy impact that it kind of set the scene for people to be expectant of personalization. And I think one of my favorite disasters was the concept of Coca-Cola branding Coca-Cola bottles with your own name. Well, now every communication I get from Coca-Cola is going to be branded with my name. Well, no, that was a single exercise. But I think what people need to do is remain confident in the fact that this still needs to be portrayed to the board and to the investors and to the budget holders as an exciting way to change your business, whilst keeping your feet firmly planted on the ground and chopping up the project of delivering real-time personalization across device into small, manageable pieces. The quickest improvement is something that, Andreas, you've already mentioned, the data layer. Unless you've got a consistent set of data across your organization that you can share with anybody, with any application, with any one of those 2,500 marketing technology companies that are out there, unless you can build that layer to share all that data, you're going to find yourself in a challenge to be able to deliver simplicity at an early stage.
Yeah, and in terms of return, in terms of success, well, it might be hard to imagine how a fully personalized web page or campaign can have an impact. But for example, one other example of Telecom, if you go to our website and see like Spain, Canary Islands, USA, and all the other destinations in the same place, there are like 8 of 10 where I don't want to go. Yeah, if you see like at least 80% relevant content, you say, wow, they know what I want to have, and I get there quicker. Yeah, I don't need to look around for which destinations should I go to.
Essentially, you say such a bottom, you say 80% relevant content. Do you have a minimum amount of content that consumers should see as relevant? Is that sort of yardstick you do?
It shouldn't be too much actually, because even with all the sophisticated models, you can still be wrong about it. Yeah? So giving the customer only like 100% personalized content or even 80% might be too much, because you might be wrong in what you were assuming. Yeah? So it should at least be 50 to 60%, yeah, so that the customer knows, okay, it seems to be like the majority of content is tailored to my own perspective, but it shouldn't be too much actually. And this might also be a myth of what you can achieve with fully personalized campaigns and websites. This is not the case. It is not a good thing to have everything tailored only to the customer, because he might be up to something totally different when he comes the next time. Yeah.
Well, you said it yourself. He might look at 8 places he doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
So if you're taking first-party data, tracking the 8 places he didn't want to go, and are sending he or she communications based on the 8 places they don't want to go, that's a bad use of personalization. It's and that kind of busts the myth around personalization, that it's just the concept of let's take first-party real-time data, let's analyze it and send content blocks relevant to what that person's doing. Actually, it does end up being a lot harder than that, because we've just identified immediately an experience where we tracked that Mrs. McEwen went to 8 different locations, and we're now sending them 8 perfectly packaged VIP offers for visits to 8 locations that individual doesn't want to go to. So, you know, it kind of brings us on to the next slide, which is this concept of dynamic content and this data exchange that I talked about earlier, which is, you know, it's almost a contract between the consumer and the business. And I guess in Germany, that contract must be really complex. Somebody who knows about Section 11 of the German federal DPA, I understand.
Yeah,
that is. It's quite a scary concept, that, isn't it? But you know, the complexities around personal data and how we utilize personal data also impact upon personalization. Because, for example, in Germany, intent is considered to be personal, which is...
That's interesting. I don't think, I mean, that's sort of new to me, probably new to our listeners. Do you want to expand a bit exactly what you mean by that?
Well, what do I mean? So you don't have to identify me as an individual. You can just put me into a bucket or a segment of people just like me, based on, if I like to read Bild in the morning, I have a flat in Frankfurt and maybe drive a BMW, you're going to put me into the Bild reading, Frankfurt flat owning BMW club. And that is considered in Germany almost personal data. Just by segmenting me in that way and putting intent for me, in Germany is considered PII. So then as a marketer, we start to get into a really scary, dangerous world, which is, so I just gave you permission to track my email and market to me in email. And we just talked about cross-device stitching. I wonder how legislation is going to grow to cover cross-device stitching. So I've given you permission on email, but now you've just sent me a Facebook page. Ooh, that feels a grey area, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure.
And I think that you know, this is another thing to bear in mind when we get all excited about personalization and what's achievable. We still haven't got to the point where people are totally comfortable with queries into their online and offline activity. We are getting there. The reality of it is technology, you know, there are still some scary metrics out there. 50% of FTSE 100 companies have yet to select a tag management solution. That just scares the living daylights out of me and excites me at the same time. But to think that people can't physically get at in an organized and structured way at the data that flows through. And then secondly, budgets that apply to the aggregation of this data are still very, very small. And these are big, hairy, scary, complex problems that require privacy lawyers, that require rewrites of cookie policies, that require technology answers, leadership buy-in, and a modern marketing communications team who can use all of those assets to provide dynamic content. And you know, the slide says it all. You know, almost half is data and technology.
Just a quick question from me. You mentioned getting buy-in, senior buy-in, and that's something that's often an issue in these new areas such as personalisation. It's a question to both of you really. How do you, Andreas, guess you first, how do you ensure senior, maybe board level buy-in to developing personalisation? How do you get the whole organisation bought into this concept?
I think with a traditional organization like TUI is, you typically have people are rather go for big scale projects in the past, but they have never seen success of those projects. And there have been, at least around technology, have been a lot of projects that have not been successful in terms of what people thought of would be a success. So I think, again, also coming from a very, very agile and startup thing world, going for small sized projects and simple messages is the key for first getting the buy-in, but also delivering the success for the buy-in. Because maybe you get a budget for a big project once, but if you don't deliver success, you never get it for the next one. Yeah. So again, my advice is go for agile projects, go for small-sized things first, get the budget for it, prove success, and then get more of those done. Maybe with a good roadmap in mind, just to tell them, I have like 10 or 15 of those small-sized projects on the road, but I'm going to do like 2 or 3 first, and we'll talk about the other 10 to 15 later on. Yeah?
You know, if I could simplify it and just say to the audience, don't believe the technology sales guys would be my best advice.
These don't believe you.
Don't believe what we're saying is what I'm saying. No, the reality of it is organizations that are out there, I'm definitely not going to name names, but these big organizations come along and advocate this rip out and replace with their this week's favorite marketing cloud. And it's the one cloud that will rule them all. And I sometimes say, and in the darkness bind them. But the reality of it is there is no one solution to solve this problem. And Andreas is absolutely right. And I'm pretty sure I can hear the sales people of the UK lamenting when I say this, and that is, you should not be embracing large, complex projects in a single instance unless you've either proved the value of the large contract and the large project, or you've chopped up that large project into small, achievable chunks with demonstrable ROI at the end of them. Because guess what? Project number 6 might very well be a $5 million project, but projects 1 to 5 will have proven ROI. They'll have small investments that allow you to sit in front of your board. And that's a challenge for us as a business. We need to change from selling people stuff to helping them on a journey towards personalization, to deal with all the complexity that goes.
That's also the challenge there. You have to have the big picture in mind, and you have to have people that can form a roadmap that consists of 10 to 15 to 20 single projects. And of course, you need to have some basic investment in platforms and data platforms, but you also need to see how this can grow, how this can scale. This is pretty important because it will be totally different after a year or two. You will not doing the same stuff you did in the first time. So you need to have that picture in mind, and this is one of the most difficult stuff about that.
And of course, we're in a pretty high, fast-moving environment here. You know, a social media channel comes online and offline in the time it takes a lift to get to the 10th floor. So, I mean, I've even seen an online advert for it. So you need to have that agility and the ability to react to changes in people's preferences and communications. Who'd have thought that we'd all want to be spoken to on our iPads in front of the telly 10 years ago?
Lots of questions coming in saying, will this presentation be available afterwards? Yes, it will, and everyone will be emailed a copy of the presentation. That doesn't mean you've got to go now. Andreas, back to you briefly. So what areas are you seeing the most progress at TUI in terms of personalisation?
I think still the most progress is in some way disconnected. So you have a lot of progress in single channels. We see email is like, you can say it's fully customized, fully personalized at the moment. Targeting, so behavioral targeting is a great topic there. So we're doing some of those, but it still needs to get to the next level, like churn prevention, for example, like advanced frequency caps. So not to be emailed like 10 times a week, but only once every 2 weeks, but at the right point in time. And of course, we have like things like display advertising or even paid search. They are heavily progressing into programmatic buying, for example, but they're still making their own progress within their channel or within, well, let's say display and paid search, for example, as a connection. What is clear next on our roadmap is connecting that off-site experience, so from marketing acquisition to the on-site experience, so that when people are being targeted, like audience specific, and they come to the website, they get the same targeting again. So it doesn't make sense if you have like a fully dynamic display banner out there. People come to the website and it's the same content again that they've seen like 100 times ago. So connecting this.
So it's all about integration of marketing messages.
Truly, it's all about integration, about the user experience from acquisition channels to the on-site experience. And what we see is one of the biggest things there is that most of your customer profile is being built before the first visit. So you need to take into account data from DMPs or from audience buying when they first approach your website, and take all those profiling and use it for, again, personalization from the first moment on. So
I've just got, Andreas, there's a quick question here from Jessica, and she points out that, she says here, we still have issues around silos in our company. I guess she's talking there about integration of marketing messages to make sure people don't see conflicting things you described. If you've got silos existing in your business, as we know many people do, especially Jessica, what do you do about it?
My advice, well, we still also have those silos, a lot of them actually, and also in today's world they are even growing. The number of silos is growing again, but there doesn't need to be a problem actually. What you need to get right is at which point do those silos interact. So you don't necessarily need to fully integrate all those data silos, but you need to know at which point there is an interface between them. One example, we don't need full customer history on the website. We only need that if it comes to, for example, purchase, or you need to know the customer has been a customer before. Most online data is totally more sophisticated, more detailed than any of our classic CRM data, for example. Yeah, so you don't need to fully integrate your CRM with your website, for example, but you need to know at which point on the website the customer expects his data from CRM systems like address, like departure airports, for example, and you don't only need to address those single points where data silos connect.
Fantastic. Same to you, Lindsay. And just for the audience, don't forget, you've still got time to get questions in, and questions panels on your right-hand side. So, Lindsay, again to you, this question of Jessica's about silos.
You know, I'm old enough to remember when middleware in technology was a pipe dream. And you know, everybody kind of went to IBM and gave them hundreds of millions of pounds, and they wrote all the applications that you needed for your business. And all of a sudden we turned up and went, oh, that's a bit of a terrible idea. Why don't you just extract packets of data you need from all those silos and share them across this thing called a transport layer, and then you can cherry pick what data you want out of those applications and use them consistently across your business. Hey, that was 25 years ago. Now we're talking about exactly the same thing in the marketing landscape, which is, you know, I don't want to fully integrate my organization because that is complex, difficult,
will never happen,
and will never happen. So why don't I just figure out what packages of data I need to take from those integrations, as you said, Andreas, and put those on a transport layer and share them with all the other silos, so everybody has a consistent data layer at which to activate personalization. And I think that's the key. It's the pre-work where you discover what you really need to personalize, as opposed to trying to fully integrate silos.
Fantastic. Okay, we've covered a lot. We've covered where we are here now with personalisation, some advice about what customers can do today. But the drum's all about the future. What's the future of personalisation? Let's talk about what's next. Over to you, Lindsay, to kick off. What are we looking for?
Well, you know, I'm pretty excited about the future, actually, because if people think they've got a handle on first-party data now, I can't wait for the next 10 years, because guess what? It's going to get reasonably terrifying. The amount of internet-enabled devices which will exist in the consumer sphere or in industry is exponential. I even saw an advert the other day for an egg box that tells you when you've run out of eggs. Now, that's a real first world problem that I'm not sure I need an electronic device to tell me when I've run out of eggs, because I can see I've run out of eggs. But I guess where they're thinking about it is, well, you know, maybe we can link that egg box with their Ocado delivery, so that actually when they get to 3 eggs, there is an egg order put onto the Ocado delivery. I'm seeing beacons. I'm seeing Adidas connecting trainers to the internet to allow various different designs to be displayed upon their shoes. I'm seeing we have an organization in South America called Meatpack, who the minute your loyalty phone, so your iPhone is connected to your loyalty account, the minute you walk in the store of a competitor, you're sent a message that says there is a 99% discount on Meatpack products, and for every second it takes you to get there, we'll reduce the discount by 1%. Now, I'm from Scotland. I would run down the corridors for a 1% increase on a discount. But you know, the future of personalization is going to see a whole huge amount of first-party, real-time, atmospheric data that exists out there for consumers who've done their research, often online. They've made product decisions. They've looked for social comment on product decisions before they've even walked into our business. So we're going to actually have to start looking at first-party data outside of the interaction with us as a business. I saw a brilliant statistic. The time that people spend in changing rooms in the last 5 years has more than quadrupled. More than quadrupled. And they purely think this is down to people seeking social comment in outfits that they're wearing. So people are taking photos, posting it online and looking for social comment. Now, I'm looking across the table at the lady who runs my marketing communications team, and she's nodding, going, yeah, I do that. So, you know, think about the complexities of being able to personalize an interaction when a lot of the decision making on the consumer side has been made before they even enter into your store. So personalization is exciting. And if you can't get it now, it's going to get even more difficult. Sorry to scare everybody.
Fantastic. Andreas, just turn to you. What do you see as the future of personalisation?
Well, it's clear that, well, we've been talking a lot about right content and right timing, but next thing is definitely right location, as you said, Lindsay. Yeah, so, saying that, we all know that at the heart of that, from the technology side, is your smartphone, your mobile phone. Yeah, there's no customer journey without a mobile phone anymore. Yeah, we're seeing like 60 to 70% mobile share when engaging with our brand. So there will be no way without targeting customers' mobile phones. But also looking at touch points that you never thought of is the next thing to do. Things that are not primarily aimed at purchasing or at booking a journey, booking a travel. So for example, if the customer is checking into his hotel at his destination, this is not a touch point that you would ever consider we could sell something to him. But this is clearly one of the things where you need to take into account, for example, when marketing for additional services, for room upgrades, for tours, for guides, stuff like that. And also it adds to you knowing about your customer, what he prefers. For example, at some of our club venues, you will have like an electronic wristband, yeah, where you of course get tracked where you are within the location, within the destination, within the hotel, and this again gives you an impression of what actually people want to see and want to use in terms of, are they going to the wellness? Are they going to the pool? Are they going to sports facilities? Are they going outside the hotel? And this again is really important information for personalization when he comes back the next time. So mobile is one thing, location, and think about touch points that you don't cover in acquiring customers, but think about touch points where you interact with the customers after they purchased something from you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can't agree with you more. Well, I have to agree with you. You're our customer, Andreas. But you know, I think what we've talked about on this call just amplifies the three real key points that you need to think about when you're approaching a personalization project. And you know, you'd expect this to come from me, but point number one is use your data. Use it. It's there. It's your most powerful asset. If it's right and you can get at it, it will allow you to make perceptions into customer behavior and give you messages that will resonate undeniably. Secondly, think about timing. Timing and location, something that Andreas spoke about earlier. You know, relevancy is not just about content. It's about the time of content and also the location of content. And lastly, don't be afraid of technology. Technology that is vendor agnostic and doesn't point you in one large marketing cloud can help you on this journey as opposed to hinder you.
Fantastic. Right, now it's time for Q&A. As usual, we've got hundreds of questions pouring in. We haven't got time to get to them all, so we'll try and get around most of them. I'm going to pick most of them. I'm going back. We'll try to get through a few of them. First of all, this is, I think, quite an interesting question. It's from Liam. Andreas, you mentioned earlier on that conversion wasn't always a great way to measure success, especially over a longer period of time, sort of 8 months from initial contact. So what would you look at measuring instead?
Well, me as an analyst, I'm quite an expert on measurement, I think. So what I think of first when people ask me which metric should I use for measuring the success is what actually happens right after the thing that you change. So when you exchange like content on your website, what is the next thing the customer does? And it's as simple as clicking on a link or in the offline world, going to a store and entering the store. This would be your first point of measurement, yeah? Because everything that happens later on is influenced by hundreds of other things, hundreds of other initiatives. So think about what is the next action the customer takes upon the content that you offer or upon the marketing activities that you're planning. That is your first metric. And then, of course, you need to have in mind, again, stakeholder or mention buy-in. Yeah, what is the things that you can present to them? How does your initiative in some way gives more value to the customer or improves other results as average cart value, for example, or conversion rates. But first think about the next action the customer takes upon the content you're serving, for example.
It's a really valid point, Andreas. Chop up your project as well as chopping up your return.
True.
So make sure that you can give incremental return as part of a project demonstrable to your stakeholders.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question. There's been several questions around this subject. It's about privacy. It's about reassuring our consumers we aren't doing anything naughty. So let's put this from Patrick from Sentience, I think sums it up best. He says, Andreas, as TUI look towards reading sensor data from beacons and mobile phones, for instance, have you started thinking about how transparent you'll be and what consumers will think about these types of technology? So again, this is what are you telling your consumers, your customers, to reassure them?
Yeah, I think Lindsay mentioned that earlier. It's not about just tracking the customer silently and without telling him about it. That will not lead to any success. We saw that in the cookie-driven world. A cookie is not a good solution for tracking anymore. You furthermore don't only need to tell your customer what you're doing, you need to ask him about it. And what we learned from Facebook and all those social media stuff is that people are willing to give away their data if they get something in return and if you ask them. And this is what we will be doing if we move ahead. We will always be asking, are we allowed to use that? We can give you this and that by using the data. Are we allowed? Is that something that you want us to do? And this is the way you should do it. I even don't think about how to hide tracking pixels. That's not the way you should approach it. You should always ask the customer for it. It might give you, in the end, some limited amount of custom profiles that you're able to action at. But the quality of those profiles and those data is so much better, yeah, and the experience for your customers is so much better that it is definitely worth it.
Lindsay, to you again. I mean, privacy is such a hot issue in this industry.
I sat in a meeting with a team of lawyers at large publishers yesterday, and this is exactly what we were talking about, which is people coming in from various different properties and various different channels, having permissive tracking over one channel and then being served personalization and data over another. And the reality of it is, Andreas is absolutely right. You know, part of this value exchange of data between a consumer and a business is trust. And you know, I don't like hearing the words secret data or tracking data. It makes it all very nefarious. You know, the reality of it is, as Andrea says, is you should be honest, you should be upfront, and people should have a preference center with your business that allows them to opt in and out of the channels that they want to be personalized to, very much in the traditional way that we would have preference centers on emails. Mm-hmm. You know, very much as when you sign up to a business, you tick, I want you to contact me by mail, phone, or fax. You know, now lawyers are now looking at these cookie policies and personalization policies and trying to grow them to accommodate multiple channels to get away from the concept of secrecy. Because if we're honest and provide value, the customer will benefit.
Excellent. Now, next question. I love this question. It's very broad to you. It's from Charlie. He asks, what are some of the best examples you've seen of FMCG or grocery brands using data or personalization? What have they done? That's three of you.
That's an amusing challenge I hear about a lot, because the retailer holds the relationship with the consumer, mm-hmm. as opposed to the manufacturer of the product. And you know, I spend a lot of time speaking to FMCG organizations who are trying to gain a relationship with their end customer. So there's the complexity. There is a further level of complexity. You have a relationship with a retailer who has a relationship with the consumer. How do you build a personalisation communication with a retailer in the middle of the data flow. It's extremely complex, and one that people are struggling with. However, we've seen lots of good examples of people personalising product to individuals. And I think that a lot of that has been done with going around the retailer as a channel for personalisation. And the Coke project was a great idea. And I've got a Whisper bar with my name on it. Being a big fan of Whisper bars and also having my name on it, it's a great personalisation. That wasn't done through a retail centre. That was done with a direct relationship, direct online relationship with a manufacturer of a good. And I think that the FMCG and all manufacturers that sell through third-party retailers are really going to have to grasp, how do I pull consumers to my brand? How do I get them to engage with me in something other than a retail setting?
Fantastic. We've just reached the end of time. This always happens. Loads more questions unanswered. You can download the report this survey generated, the pressure of personalisation. We produced with our partner Tealium. It's on the drum.com. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening and thank my esteemed expert guests, Andreas and Lindsay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job.